Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner.
Hi, welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers. My name is Candace Thomas. I am here with...
I'm eager to introduce myself. I'm Jody L. Milner.
Yay. Today, Jody and I are talking about writing advice. And I wanted to go over like best and worst, but really we're going to talk about just advice in general because, I mean, writing advice is something you can take or give. I mean, it's different for each person.
It's like peanuts.
Yeah. So I was currently, the reason why I bring this up, I was currently reading a book. It was just published, and it's called Gentle Writing Advice by Chuck Wendig. And I really enjoyed it. Now, the thing about it is let me just kind of reiterate what Chuck Wendig, who he is. He's a horror writer, and he has kind of a big personality, and he's also very sometimes abrasive. So this book is interesting to come from him because and I swear we're not going to talk about this book, I promise. He has given advice that's been very like button chair, right? Like the wind, if you're not doing the thing, you're not going to get the thing. Been very in your face about advice. And so to read this book kind of made me reflect on, well, what kind of advice have I ingrained? What have I thrown away? What works and what doesn't? I mean, and I just, people are always seeking for advice for everything, not just writing, just for everything. Like this little nugget of advice is going to make everything work and everything perfect and everything's going to sync together, all that kind of stuff. So advice is just an interesting concept. How about that? But it's something we are always seeking. Like in our validation episode that we did last time, we talked about what we need to kind of feed our creative soul. And advice is one of those things that we also seek. It's just
However, advice can be a two-edged sword a lot of the time. I feel that, especially for people who aren't making writing their number one effort that they do every day, us distracted people who have a lot of things going on in our lives, a lot of this writing advice will come across as unrelatable, unattainable, and really unhelpful.
Totally.
It can be damaging. I think Hemingway famously gave out really bad advice just because he could. And I'm going to paraphrase this badly.
Okay.
But one of his worst ones is like, when you finish your draft, put it away for a year and then just look at it and then do another pass and then wait another year. Like his process would have taken like 8 years if you did the whole thing. And like I said, I paraphrased that really badly. And so a lot of advice that a professional will give to a new writer is not going to hit right.
True.
And I think it can be actually damaging because people are like, but I can't do that. Mm-hmm. Someone's like, I need to spend 2 hours to get ready for my writing session and includes a bath and meditating. And I want to slap them because it's so unpractical.
I so agree. And I think that what I absorbed before it was published is definitely different from what I need now that I have been published. There's such a big wall between the two. So is there a rule book that you've ever followed for finding advice, giving advice?
I think I used to be a little bit more seeky for the magic bullet that was going to make everything work. And so I would listen to advice and be like, oh, I should do that. And then take 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 months, like trying to fix my thing to match that specific advice. And then realizing that not only did it not really help, it actually made things worse.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was so desperate to be like, please love this thing I'm making. If I don't do it the way so-and-so says I'm doing it, then clearly it must be wrong because they're awesome. And I should take their advice. But I'm not them. And this story isn't their story. And so by taking, I set myself back because I kind of overanalyzed like the needs of my story versus somebody's professional opinion. Yeah. You can waste a lot of time chasing somebody else's rainbow.
Uh-huh.
And so when it comes to writing advice, like, I don't think there is a rule book for writers to follow. I don't think anyone has the exact same process as anybody else.
Well, and the interesting thing about writing in general is there's no SOPs. So I come from a science background, right? And SOPs are our standard operating procedure, which we have to follow absolutely to the letter. And like other jobs, they have those guidelines to say, well, you should do this and you should do that. Writers don't have that. We don't have that. And I feel that some people are trying to put things in place. They'll put out these books that say, this is exactly what you need to do. But everyone's process, when you're working with creativity, everyone's process is different, especially with how a person's creativity comes and how it needs to be outletted is different for every single person.
And I come from a research background back in the day, and so I'm very familiar with SOPs, but we almost use them as like a dirty word, because they're obnoxious. They're a pain. But you have to do them because if you go off of that, then the results are unpredictable. Mm-hmm. And unpredictability in most settings is bad.
In my professional experience with SOPs, people die. So we do not go off what the SOP, like we do not go off that standard ever. That has nothing to do with it. So I think writing advice has changed in the last 10 years for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I've been published for 10 years. But before then there wasn't much of a network or outlet for indie writers. Like Amazon was just starting to kind of create this lovely little thing that was called Create Space. And nobody really knew exactly. They wanted to use this new tool, but they didn't know how to use this tool and they didn't know how to go and publish. But you can publish anything. Go ahead and just load up your document and put it out there. And that was a little like we never knew exactly. We didn't have any kind of background to know exactly what was going to happen from that. So I think that the writing advice, like anything that was older than 10 years, may not be applicable now. I mean, especially when it comes to marketing. Maybe I'm thinking in a marketing sense, but I think in a writing sense as well, because there's so many products that are so instant now. You can write a book, you can get it edited, it can be out in I've heard of it, just people cranking out books every 3 months, and I'm not that person. But that is something that can be done. And I think that, so I can't, if I'm looking at, let's say, On Writing by Stephen King.
Famous example.
Everyone's like, oh, that is the quintessential Bible for writers that you should definitely read this. And
it's not writing advice. If you've actually read it, it's like, this is how he did his thing.
It's process advice.
It's how he did his stuff.
Yes, and I read through it, and I did nothing gravitated, nothing stuck with me, nothing resonated. Of course, I'd already had a process. I'd already published books by the time I was reading this book.
Well, and what stuck with me is this is hard, and you're going to have to work hard to make it work.
Yeah.
That was what my take home from the book is that.
And that you're going to get lots of rejections and that kind of stuff. Right? Yeah, it's just especially, and you brought up the point of big names, putting in advice and not having them be extremely relevant to younger writers or people that haven't published yet, or even just us new people that have published. It's just hard to Hemingway it
Well, yeah, if you've already got a bunch of people that are going to clamor for anything you write, then your advice will be skewed because you're like, ooh, this works for me. I'm like, that's great. You could probably write the back of a Cheetos box.
Cheetos box.
They come in pints. Like, he could probably write the instructions on how to wash your hair and people would think it was brilliant. But that's because he had a name. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about like 10 years ago, like you have to remember this whole indie thing, while it's been going on for quite a while, even 10 years ago, the big push was go traditional or go home.
Yeah.
And so, and now it's like even people who have been famously traditional are also now doing indie because financially speaking, it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to know some advice that you received before you were published and that you kind of ingrained into your process.
Good advice or bad advice? So the one that I've kind of ingrained is one that my editor keeps handing to me over and over again because I need it. And it comes under the acronym WIBBOW, WIBBOW. Would I be better off writing?
Oh.
And it's what you hold up to how you decide how to use your time. So if you'd be better off finishing and publishing your next book, that should be your number one priority. If that's going to make your career or your authorly experience, if that's going to be the thing that you need to do, then that should be your number one priority. And a lot of people will be like, but I need to be on TikTok and I need to be writing blog posts and I need to be getting interviews and I need to be doing all of this minutia that honestly doesn't really shift the needle as much as putting out the next amazing thing for the readers that you've already gathered that love what you do. So would I be better off writing or WIBBOW? WIBBOW.
That's pretty good. I think that something that stuck with me, and it specifically before I was writing, is that I should write as much as I can before I was published. Because once you get published, your world changes. You have deadlines, you have marketing, you have shows, it fills in all the gaps. And so you have to separate your time to write, when before it was just kind of like this gift that you could just write whenever you wanted, right? So I remember my kids being little and I would just put on something for them and I would just write while they were watching TV or whatever. Now I have to schedule time to write because I am too busy. I have too many books out and I have too many expectations and too many deadlines that I just don't have enough time to write. So that was the thing that stuck with me. I did write my second novel before my first one was published or even sold. And that was really great because once my first book did well, my publisher just wanted all of them. So I had my second one ready. We put that one out and it was out within a year from the first one because it was already done. But the third one I had not written. And I'm glad because I didn't, for some reasons, because my plot kind of completely shifted. When you publish a book and you go through their editing process, then it's a lot different than what you would imagined. But I struggled so hard with deadlines, and that was the hardest book I've ever had to write, ever, was being under the scrutiny of a deadline. It's really like stressful, so stressful. And anybody in the writing world knows this, that it's just stressful to hit those deadlines and to write those books.
Yeah, writing under pressure, your creativity can't do the magic little twinkly unicorn things that normally it could do if you're writing unrestrained and unfettered. Mm-hmm. Although you can get a lot of really good work done if you feel like you're really inspired and you have a certain amount of time. You're like, ooh, I'm going to crack down because I have to have this done. Mm-hmm. And then the focus gets a lot stronger too.
Yeah, that's true.
And now A word from our sponsor.
This episode was sponsored by the Farmhouse Recording Studio. The Farmhouse Recording Studio is located in Bluffdale, Utah. It was designed and built for podcasts, audiobooks, radio ads, and so much more. Visit us at farmhouserecording.com. That's all one word, farmhouserecording.com. Or visit our Instagram at The Farmhouse Recording Studio, all one word. Now back to the show.
Ooh, you have a good one on here. How do you feel about advice given from people who probably shouldn't be giving advice?
Yes.
I have feelings.
Okay, tell me.
I have so many feelings on this one. Okay, and I know it's all good intention because all advice is coming from a good intention, and you do have to remember that. But if someone who has never published is telling me how to market my books or how to finish a book, I'm going to look at them a little squirrely, like a little askance. Like, where is this coming from in your pool of experience? Like, to prove to me that what you're saying makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and when you're going to conferences a lot and when you're part of a writing organization, you're going to have a lot of friends that are on different experience levels. And a lot of them want to be so helpful and they want to be like, I have all of this wisdom. And so they're like, why don't you do this? And I'm just like, because it makes no sense.
Right. I am absolutely totally with you. Let me say, I was the best parent before I had before I had children.
Oh,
right?
Man. Yeah.
I was the best parent. Like, I would say, oh man, they are doing things so completely wrong. If I were that child's mother, I would do this and this and this. And then you have your kids and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. There's no rule books here.
My kid will never scream, oh yeah? Want to bet?
Mine, when she was still, ran away in the mall going, you're not my mother.
Ooh.
I know. And I'm chasing her, because I was like, you can't say that. Please don't say that. Yeah, no, I was the best. I bring that up because I was the best parent before I was actually a parent.
Before you had kids.
And it's the same thing with writing. You can have all the advice you want, but until you've actually tasted and tried it, you don't know. It's hard to take advice from people who haven't experienced what you've experienced.
I had an entire blog of writing advice before I put a book out.
Really?
Yeah,
Is it still up?
Yeah.
Can I look at it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm writing that down. I'm going to look at Joni's blog.
If y'all want to, it's on myliteraryquest.wordpress.com.
And I wonder how applicable is it? Is it still applicable to the things that you do?
Luckily, this was when I was trying to write my first book. And so it was me figuring out how to do things. So I'm like, I don't understand how this form of dialogue tagging works. I'm going to research it. I'm going to write a blog post about it because it was helping me create my own mini MFA about how the structure of everything works. So most of the stuff there I feel is still relevant and valuable. And I still get a ridiculous number of hits on it. And so I think a lot of it is good. There's also a lot of it where I look back at now and I'm really cringe. It's like very cringy. Because I'm like, I have this beautiful idea about this whole story and it's going to be amazing. And then I'm like, oh yeah, the story went so left from that. It's just, yeah.
That's awesome. Do you ingrain anything in your daily habits? Like, do you have any mantras that you kind of express or say?
Something that keeps me doing the stuff? Oh, goodness. Like, keep on swimming. Like, Dory's kind of my spirit animal. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Like, because a lot of it's a grind and a lot of it's just a lot of hours in the chair. And so, it's just keep going. Because for me, everything, even bad stuff, like, is a learning experience. And if you're taking it as, what did I learn from this? Then the sting isn't as bad as the, oh my gosh, that was the worst thing ever. And I'm a loser. I'm a failure. No, that doesn't help you. Mm-hmm. You say, oh, what did I learn from this? And it's like, oh, I'm not going to pay that person to do anything for me ever again. learning experience.
See, and that's kind of where I'm at too, is like, you'll just never know. You never know what you can find. Like you can, I'm, let me experiment here and see what happens and see what I can do and what I can learn from this. So yeah, I don't really have any daily mantras. I don't know when it comes to writing. I didn't write it down. Let me tell you this though. When we were talking about before writing, before published and after published. So this is my analogy of the door. Okay, so I know. So before I was published, there was this really great house. Really, just imagine this, a beautiful house, and it has this awesome door and beautiful gardens and everything. And there's inside, it's a party. They're having a great party inside that door. And so this is before you're published. You want to get inside that door. You want to see what's inside. And so I had been dreaming about getting through this door for years, like since I was, a teenager, right? You imagine what it's going to be like when you get past this door. So finally, I get a key, I open up the door, and what do I find on the other side of the door? Any ideas?
A mirror.
Wrong. That's too quirky. No, I find a bunch of people looking for another door. because everyone on the other side,
yeah, that tracks,
is also kind of floundering, going, well, then
now
what?
Now what?
So here I am, and I'm on the other side, and then you're trying to find another specific formula or some kind of other thing that's going to magically change what the publishing world is going to look like. And it just doesn't quite exist.
If anyone's making you promises that they can change your entire publishing life, they're trying to sell you something. And you will see it all over the place. The second the universe is like, ooh, writer.
Yeah, no kidding.
You will get the weirdest amount of random focused marketing campaigns on how to make your next book a #1 bestseller. They want your money. Yes. They will say anything they can to get your money. So please, grain of salt. The education is amazing, and I think you can get it in a lot of places. And I don't think it shouldn't cost you an arm and a leg to get it, because you can find the same advice pretty much everywhere. Even at places that are like, we will teach you the secret. The secret's the same advice you'll probably get from anyone who's published.
Yeah, exactly.
And most people who have published are awesome, and they're like, yes, please, I will share my secrets with you, because this party needs more people looking for doors.
Yes, we need to find that other door, everyone.
Maybe you have the key.
Yes.
All right. Worst advice, just a sound bite. Do you have one off the top of your head?
No.
Worst advice you've ever received. Okay, I'll do mine, and then you can, if you come up with one.
Okay.
So this is just a random piece of advice. Someone's like, the reason I do so well is that I never start my sentences with the word the. Not even joking. That was probably the single piece of memorable writing advice I've received that's like, what?
Don't go to bed angry.
I thought that was relationship advice.
Yes, that is relationship.
That's good advice.
The worst writing advice. Oh, geez. I can't think of any right now. I don't know. And this is my episode, and I haven't even. Well,
ending things on cliffhangers. Yes, it's good if it's the right cliffhanger. There's a way of screwing this up.
I'll come up with something. What about any books that you would recommend, or sites or people that have good advice?
2 books that come to mind. Save the Cat Writes a Novel. Excellent, not necessarily advice, but how story structure works for very specific stories. Because most stories will fit in a specific box, and reader expectation is everything. And so if you can meet the expectation, you've got a winner. If you start with something like 2 people falling in love, and then you end with the world's going to explode, people are going to be very confused about what your story is about. Mm-hmm. And so Save the Cat by Jessica. This is Save a Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. And it talks about satisfying storylines in depth. The other one is Worlds of Wonder by David Gerald. If you're going to do any form of genre fiction, he encapsulates the idea of creating these places that are so amazing. And he does it in a way that is very inspiring and very pretty, where it's just like, I do want that. And your argument is helping me understand why I should work for it. So I really did like Worlds of Wonder by David Gerald. How about you?
Well, as I said, I'm kind of a Chuck Wendig fan. And he's written a few about this. I can't quote them because then we'll have an explicit on our podcast.
His one has a swear word in it.
Yes, but please look into any Chuck Wendig. And I really enjoyed, honestly, the gentle writing advice. And because of where we are in life right now. After, living through a pandemic and we're all kind of coming out a little bit broken, it's really lovely to read just encouraging words that don't really specifically tell you should write the thing exactly like this is. Just be comfortable with who you are as a writer. And yes, you should ingrain like writing every day and doing other things like that, but do it at your pace and find what works best for you. So, yeah, Chuck Wendig. That's what I liked.
So if I'm going to leave any take-home advice, see what I did there?
Oh, advice!
If I'm going to leave any take-home advice is that I think I'll double down on your process is your process, and you're not going to know what your process is until you try all sorts of random stuff and decide if it works for you or not. Mm-hmm. So don't be afraid to try, like we talked about, writing sprints. Don't be afraid to try writing sprints or writing with a partner or anything that you're like, this might work for me. Give it a go. Because the worst you'll find out is, my brain doesn't like that, and I will never do it again.
Yeah, I think my take-home advice is finish. Just finish it. Just finish it. Don't keep rewriting the first 7 chapters. Get to the end. And it's really hard to take that.
That is good advice.
That editor out of your brain and just keep writing. Because, as a novice writer, before I was published, I wanted to reread all my stuff and I wanted to have it absolutely perfect, not knowing that I'm going to have to rewrite this multiple times. And so quieting the editor and just finishing to the end is really important, because once you understand the ending, you will understand where to go back and finish and fill in all of those details. So that's my advice, and you can take it or leave it. How about that?
Fine.
Yay. Okay. So tell me, what's our next episode, Jody? What are we talking about?
All right. So next week, we're going to talk all about accountability partners and how to use them. The pros and cons and benefits of having someone that is your personal cheerleader and you are their personal cheerleader as well.
Interesting. Okay. We'll see how that goes. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Squirrel, the Distracted Writer podcast, the podcast for distracted writers. And we'll I don't know. Come next time, hear what we have to say. It'll all be good.
Thank you for listening. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you for listening to the Squirrel podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. This episode was recorded at the Farmhouse Recording Studio. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone.
And scene.
And scene.
The Esperanto story.
Esperanto is the language that they speak in Off to Be the Wizard. They call it Esperanto.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, their language. I don't remember exactly when they use it, but that's one of the things that cracked me up.